This episode of The Minimalists is brought to you by nobody, because advertisements suck.
This podcast has bad words.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Minimalist Podcast, where we discuss what it means to live a meaningful life with less. My name is Joshua Fields Milburn.
And I'm Ryan Nicodemus, and together we are The Minimalists.
Now, we're supposed to have Kate Bauer here today. She couldn't make it.
Kate, you look so pretty today.
Thank you very much. I decided not to shave.
I think we're going to reschedule her. We're here with Josh Wolf. Josh, I wanted to talk to you about so much today. This is a listener-driven show, so we've got some questions to dive into. But I heard you say something fascinating recently. By the way, you're a comedian.
I am.
And I'm going to get into some of the comedy as well, although I'm sure it'll be apparent throughout. But I want to talk about something serious first.
Okay.
Your marriage. I heard you talk about your marriage and how COVID may have saved it in a way. The pandemic, the quarantine may have saved it.
Yeah.
May have illuminated some things you weren't aware of.
Yes. You know, I have been a touring comic for a long time.
Let's paint that picture. What does that look like? You're on the road how many days a year? How many weeks a year?
I would tell you the last 3 years in particular, I've been hitting it pretty hard, and I would say anywhere from 40 to 46 weeks.
Wow.
Woo.
Wow.
And so, but it seemed, okay, if you back it up a little bit, what I've realized more and more the longer I'm in Hollywood, which is one of the reasons that we're moving, is that no matter how successful you get, you always feel like you need to be on the wheel. This town keeps you on the wheel.
Oh, yeah.
This town combined with social media, because you're constantly looking at people who have more, who are doing better. That's constantly what you're being shown. You need this is cool, but you shouldn't be satisfied with this because this is next.
Yeah.
And that's right. I'm going to rest next weekend after I get this. And then you get that and you're like, ooh, if I work a little harder, I get this, right? And this town really keeps people on the wheel like that. It's how they keep the machine going.
Yeah.
It's never enough. It's never enough. It's never enough.
Right.
So, and as a comic, you know, or especially early on, we work for chicken fingers. There is a different comic mentality, which is, I'm going to take this gig because I don't know if it's going to be the last gig I ever get.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's just that we're like, I'm taking this one. I'll rest next weekend. So you know how long the dry years are. And then you know there comes a point in time in your life where people are like, I don't want to see that fucking old dude. Do you know what I mean? So in your brain, you're like, I have this finite amount of time. I am going to go as hard as I can. So I was doing all of these weeks, and I would tell my wife, you know, but we need the money for this. Or, you know, I just need the money for this. And every gig.
And those aren't lies, by the
No.
way.
And
we can make up these stories.
100%. It wasn't like I was saying we don't need to save money or we don't, right? But every next gig became the most important. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
Like every next gig was like, we do need this one because this.
Yeah.
And we had gotten used to an abnormal life being normal. We had gotten used to being apart and living apart. So when quarantine came, we neither one of us realized that was what was happening to our lives. And we talked about all the time about how much we love each other and we have this great relationship. And I think it was just talking points. And then the first 2 weeks was like a honeymoon.
No.
Thriving.
That's great.
And then after those 2 weeks, it was like, hey, when are you going to leave me the fuck alone? Like, I'm not used to you being here.
And this is both of you saying this.
We were used to, so what she had ended up telling me was, you know, when you used to come home and the kids were young, I did not look forward to you coming home. I look forward to seeing you, but we had a flow. You upset the apple cart every time.
Oh, wow.
And then I had to come and reset that shit. Not that I was coming home and doing anything bad, but I have my energy and she has hers. And she sets up her house for it to have her flow when it's just her and the kids, which was a lot of the time. So I would come home and fuck that up. And then, so my kids are older. So we became empty nesters. And that's when it really became her life, my life. And together, when I was home, I was back on the wheel. So it wasn't like I was together and home and present. I was doing shows, I was doing gigs, I was taking meetings, and she was having her life. And we had just gotten used to that. And so quarantine made us realize how unhappy we were
Wow.
with each other. To being, you know what I mean? I was just like, yeah, I shouldn't be upset with you when you walk into the room and I'm by myself drinking coffee and you sit down and you're like, how's it going? I shouldn't be upset that you're in my space because we're married. Like, I want to be with you. But I was so used to being by myself, it was the same thing. Like, she was upsetting my flow that I set for myself, which is I do what I want during the day. I don't really have anyone else to. It's not that I'm out with hookers and coke, but like I do what I want during the day because I'm by myself.
Yeah.
And we had to relearn how to be together and figure out if we still liked it.
And how did you do that?
What
was the process like?
Okay. For me, it was putting down my phone.
Yeah.
People tell you all the time, hey, you got the social media numbers got to go up. Content. So that's the new carrot that dangles in front of your face for us, right? And so it was that. I was like, put that down, be more present, cook dinner together. Not that we weren't going to do our work and our stuff anymore, but like set time apart, walk the dog together, set time, even if it's just as small as this is the show we're going to watch together. Or, hey, we're not going to turn on our phones until 10. Or whatever those things were to reconnect and really be like, are we still compatible? Because at that point, I don't think either one of us knew if that is what was happening.
I think a lot of these questions start to come up when we start to have these problems, and they manifest in different ways. They can manifest in a healthy way where you start asking each other these questions, like, are we still compatible? Or they start to manifest in nitpicking and rage and passive-aggressive behavior. Did you notice any of that?
Yes.
Early on?
And I also noticed, and recently, and I can tell you recently, and one of the reasons I'm glad I turned off my phone is I could feel myself recently, both of us, sliding back down into that wheel. Like the last 3 weeks, and things get tense in our house. We're a little shorter with each other. We're when I see us downstairs in the morning and I'm drinking a coffee and she's drinking a tea and I'm in the living room and she's in the dining room and we're both on our phones, I'm like, oh yeah, we're back. We're back into the being those people. And so I definitely feel a slip sliding back in every now and then. But the nitpicking and the jumping on each other, a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. And here's the thing. She is a very vocal person. She likes to talk it out. Guess who doesn't? You know what I like to do? Let's just be. Let's just figure it out as we go. I don't want to talk about it every day. I really don't want to talk. I just want to learn how to do it.
Yeah.
But she's like, this is how we're going to learn how to do it.
Right.
We're going to learn how to do it by talking about it.
Right. You kind of need a direction, right? And it sounds to me like that's what she's saying is,
yes.
Hey, we need to identify what direction in which we're traveling. And you're like, I just want to travel.
Yes. She wants us to be like, hey, if we have this schedule, like from here to here, this is how we're going to do this. We're going to do from 10 to 11, no phone. We're going to talk, we're going to just look at each other. We're going to take a walk or whatever we're going to do. And I want to be like, hey, let's just wake up in the morning with this is how we know we're supposed to do it. And she's like, yeah, but we don't do that.
Yeah.
We don't do that. We just slide into what we know best,
right?
Which is work.
Yeah.
Not what we know is best, but what we already know.
That's the thing. You slide into comfort.
Yeah. And convenience.
Yeah.
Well, you talk about the sort of the treadmill, the rat race, the carrot in front of you, whatever you want to call it. And there's a philosopher who calls it object A. And so like it's this term in philosophy, like as soon as I get whatever my object A is, it can be a new relationship, it can be the dream home, it can be the career, it can be the stand-up gig, it can be X amount of dollars, it can be the marriage, It could be drugs, whatever we think it is. It's going to be the thing that satisfies everything.
Yeah.
And of course, we always get it. And then we always feel the object of our desire becomes the object of our discontent in many ways.
It's so fascinating that, especially, and I can't speak for other fields, in this field, people are never satisfied. People are never, I mean, I've always said, man, why does Kevin Hart work so fucking hard? He's got a gazillion. What else does The Rock need?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like you have all of these things, but you're still, those two dudes are still grinding every day.
Yeah.
Now, I think if you ask them, and by the way, they're both incredibly positive people, and right, and I think live life the right way. But like, I say to myself, oh, if I reached that level, I would take more time off. But would I?
Right.
But do you know what I mean? But when are you ever satisfied? I want to learn how to be satisfied. I just haven't figured it out.
Yeah.
I haven't figured out how
What's
to do it.
You know, the sort of the four truths of Buddhism are like, one of them has to do with suffering, right? And the other one is desire, right? That, like, clearly there's a connection between yearning or craving, is probably a better word, and suffering.
Yeah.
Now, if you were to give a charitable explanation to someone like The Rock or Kevin Hart, I don't know whether this applies to them or not, but the charitable explanation would be is they really enjoy the journey.
Yes.
So that's great. But it very well could be that, well, maybe they're just craving, and it's that whatever the new object A is, if I just make Jumanji 3, then I'll be happy, right?
Right.
And I think the truth is that if we're not contented with where we are, it's going to be difficult being contented wherever we end up.
Yeah.
That's so interesting to say. That I have a friend of mine who moves from state to state all of the time.
Yeah.
Basically between two states, I should say.
Okay.
This state, California, and where he grew up.
Okay.
But every time he moves, he's like, nah, you know what? I got to go back because this is going to be better there. And I'm like, I just don't think you're happy. It doesn't matter where you're moving, dude. You're thinking your location means happiness.
Right.
We've seen this now, no joke, probably between these two states, probably done 8 or 9 moves that I know of.
Yeah.
Well, I actually want to talk to you about moving. We're going to do it on the Maximal because you're moving to Nashville soon.
Yes, yeah.
So maybe we can like psychoanalyze
absolutely.
that as a couple amateur psychoanalysts.
But I would love to know, like, what does satisfied feel like? Like how do you know what I mean? Like how you guys seem, I don't know if content, satisfied, I don't know but how do you know that? I know it seems like it's almost like getting on the wheel to reach satisfied.
Yeah.
But how do you?
I think it's when Josh brought up the Buddhist principle, that's where my mind went to, is like life is suffering. So it's not about not suffering. It's about how do you deal with the suffering.
Yeah.
I feel like minimalism has helped me get to a point where I'm comfortable with boredom. So like going out of my way. So I'm a pretty big extrovert.
Yeah.
Huge extrovert.
And
the biggest extrovert I know.
When we were in Missoula, Montana, I remember I didn't know a lot of people. We just moved there. I didn't know a ton of people. So I was kind of like getting antsy, getting uncomfortable. And Milburn went to a movie by himself. And he used to always do that. But I just remember one particular time he went to a movie by himself. I'm like, what a psycho.
Yeah.
What kind of psycho goes to a movie by themselves? But then that raised the question where I was like, why am I uncomfortable with that?
Yeah.
So I started to do things that I felt uncomfortable with, that were kind of boring, but getting comfortable with being with myself, essentially. So, now I still want bigger and better things, in the sense that, we've got a documentary coming out. We have a book coming out. I want to go on tour with the book. I'd love to go on tour with the doc. I don't think we can do that, though. But long story short, I'm always looking at the next thing. Mm-hmm. But if it all like just stopped right now, like it's not the end of the world for me.
It's pretty awesome. We get to do this every week.
It really is awesome.
But as part of being satisfied, do you feel like finding that thing that you do love? Like for me, stand up doesn't feel like work.
Yeah.
stand up doesn't feel like the wheel.
Yeah.
Stand up is very satisfying to me.
I was talking. Let's talk about this word satisfying. I have something. It's actually in our new book that's coming out next year. It's called The Satisfaction Continuum. And so, like, I think the problem is we confuse.
That was my nickname in high school. There you go.
I think some people confuse the different types of well-being, and usually I think what we're talking about here is pleasure versus joy. So pleasure is on one end of that continuum, and there's nothing wrong with it, but like there's nothing inherently good about pleasure either. Like you could have sex, meaningful, make love with your wife, and it's amazing. You get pleasure out of that.
Yeah.
You can also do heroin and get pleasure out of that, possibly even more pleasure, right? And that's going to ruin your life, right? And the same is even true with sex, right? Like you can masturbate and get pleasure, but it's not nearly as meaningful as a shared experience with someone you love. And so I think there's this whole continuum. I wrote these 4 words down: pleasure, happiness, contentment, and joy. We conflate all of them. We use them interchangeably. Like, oh yeah, it makes me really happy, or yeah, we're really happy together. And it's like, well, that's not a noble goal. Happiness should always be the byproduct, not the desired result.
Yeah.
Because happiness, at least in my view of happiness, it's fleeting. And so we try to achieve, it's the thing we're talking about with the object A. You'll get it and you'll feel happy for an hour, a day, a week, a month.
But do you feel like that is part of, like, the happiness is part of the chase of getting whatever you say object A is?
Yeah, definitely.
And so it's not the object itself, it's almost the chase.
It's finding happiness in the chase.
In the chase.
Yeah. And not just happiness, though, it's finding contentment. So I think the healthier version of all of this is contentment, where it's not fleeting like happiness is. It's being content with the current situation. Nothing wrong with improving upon the situation. In fact, growth is really good. Responsible growth is. There's some growth that's really bad. Cancer is tumor is a terrible kind of growth, right? And so we can have cancerous growths in our life as well. But then ultimately, I think the ultimate version of this, what the Greeks would call eudaimonia, we would just call it joy, basically, or maybe even tranquility. But that usually occurs.
By the way, I'm going to use eudaimonia in a sentence today, and I'm going to be, you don't know what that means?
You know what that means?
Go ahead and Google that.
Get educated.
Get your shit together, find some eudaimonia, all right?
I only know because Nicodemus is Greek. So I think we're really talking about joy here, and that's always shared with other people. It's you can't be joyous on a desert island by yourself. In fact, you can be content. You could be there meditating, perfectly content, monk in a cave. But even if you have a spark of joy on that island, it's because you've thought about someone else. You thought about the stand-up set you did that was really good, right? And the times it's going really well with stand-up, you lose all clock time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we call that flow state or any of these other things. But like, I just call it being alive. Like, there are the times where you felt like your best self. You felt like your most alive self. And I think those are the things that we strive for in theory, but in practice we strive for the pleasure because it's easier.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. I hate everything about being a stand-up except doing the stand-up.
Yeah, well,
I hate the travel. Now I do. I didn't when I was younger, but at this point, I don't like the travel. I don't like the hotel.
You've done it already.
It's not
doing it again.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird how it starts out so exciting?
Yeah,
we did the same thing when we first went on tour. I'm like, we're doing it.
Yeah.
Going across the country.
And now you're like, what?
Yeah. And we did like 100 cities in a year, and now it's like we got to do 20 cities in a year, and I'm like, shit, man. We got 20 cities.
You look at that list, you're like, man, I don't want to go to that city. Oh my god.
But Regina again.
Oh, you're heading up to Regina? Yeah, I like it up there in Regina. Yeah. But yeah, I'm with you. What I know that I can't find anywhere else is that hour and a half of freedom on stage.
Yeah. But that's the cost of that's the price of admission, basically,
yes.
right? And so that's why that makes the 20 cities worth it, because when we're there and we're talking to the people, we're doing a live podcast or a book reading, it's the flow state. It's alive.
It's weird.
You
I hate
feel
touring,
alive.
but if we could just tour all the time and that's how we, did our business, I actually would be okay with that. Even though I hate touring, it is that
So
interaction with people that's, you can't replace it.
no,
Yeah.
and if you think about like, my wife asked me over this quarantine. She's like, "So why did you want to be away from me? Did you want?" And I was like, "That not it at all. For sure the money and the next gig, but like." Also a little bit of chasing that dragon of being on stage.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only, I feel so alive on stage. I feel so free and just, I almost feel more myself on stage than I do off stage. I definitely feel more relaxed.
Oh wow.
My shoulders are never up on stage. And I'll catch myself during the day walking around. I'm like, you're by yourself, dude. What? Just
Relax.
drop your shoulders.
Yeah.
But on stage, everything is just slowed down. And so I chase that feeling. I wish I could find it somewhere else. I just don't know where else it is for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, it'd be great if you could teleport onto stage, every night.
Come
and then
on.
you were back, right?
That would be amazing.
But I mean, I think the reality is there is a cost of doing whatever we do, whether it is the podcast or writing a book and arguing with a publisher about that or whatever. Like those aren't the parts that we like, but it's sort of like it's the administration of life that allows you to have the focus. I mean, what we want is to have more of that focus time and less of the nonsense. But the nonsense it often apes the form of productivity. You mentioned social media. I've got to, and then we can even, because you are influential in a way, it's like, well, I have an excuse to get on there and post and scroll and like and all this. I'm engaging with an audience, and it's like, are you really?
It's also so ego driven. It's not a mistake that they call the people followers.
Right.
I'm like, I have followers?
Well.
Okay. Hey, if that's how that is like that word alone.
Yeah. By the way, 20 years ago, no one had followers other than like cult leaders.
Yeah, Jim Jones.
Yeah.
And that's crazy. So
now we're all cult leaders.
But you also this social media and even podcast to a point has given a lot of us a false sense of self-importance. I can tell these are my followers, so I'm going to give them my opinion, and they're going to believe that's what they're going to take as the gospel truth. Right. Which is, you can, if you follow podcasts or anybody in social media, it's dangerous. I'm like,
man.
These people follow this person. They don't know anything about them except what's on their Instagram and what they're putting out about their fake life.
Yeah.
And whatever their views they want to pretend to have or really have, whatever. And these people are taking it like, this is how I should live my life.
Yeah.
It's dangerous.
It is.
It makes us, Ryan and I, before you got here, we were just talking about how like this is the mommy and daddy syndrome. It's I either want the government to take care of me or now it's I want an influencer to take care of me. How? Well, to give me the template. And I think Ryan and I are really careful because he and I have radically different beliefs about spirituality. We have different beliefs about politics. We voted for two different people in the last election.
Let me guess which two.
No.
I don't mean which one to get, but
right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but there are actually more than two people to vote for in that last election.
Yeah. That's true. There were. Yeah. There should have been more.
Right.
And so I think what we've identified here is that we can be different human beings. Fuck, where was I going with this? I was so.
Different human beings.
We're careful with our message. Like we don't try to proselytize.
That's it. Recipe instead of a template.
Right.
So like I think that there is a if you're trying to follow exactly the template, then you want to be whoever, Logan Paul or something.
Yeah.
Like good luck. You can't be Logan Paul, right? If you want to be Ryan Nicodemus, you can't, but you can look at his recipe and say, oh, I like that ingredient. I like that ingredient. That one's disgusting. I don't like that. And,
right. Yeah.
And you can kind of create your own recipe in a way. And I think that's what we're really careful, like Ryan said, not to proselytize.
Yeah. Should we get any of these questions, you think?
Yeah, probably.
This is going to go on forever. I mean, I'm happy for it to go on forever.
Yeah. We got a lot to talk about. Let's answer at least one question here.
All right.
Speaking of Saskatchewan,
yes,
we have Aaron and Regina.
I've completely minimized my life, except my boyfriend. I haven't minimized him in any kind of way. So I guess I should first state that he's perfect otherwise, because I know you're going to tell me that I can't change people around me, but I can change people around me. He likes to pile up dishes at the sink, in the sink, all around the house. And I had an epiphany today that what if I just box up my entire kitchen and just leave him one plate, one set of utensils, coffee mug that can be used for juice and coffee, and take all that stuff with me when I leave for work next week and just kind of see how that holds up. So I guess I'm just asking for some advice on living with someone who can't seem to put anything away and just has no plans to do that. But other than that, they are perfect.
Speaking of passive-aggressive behavior, Aaron, I actually respect that you're trying to do something, and yes, you're right. So we've got this little line. It goes, you can't change the people around you, but you can change the people around you.
Yeah.
Meaning you can't
Yeah.
force someone to change.
Yeah.
But you can surround yourself with people with similar values, etc. Right? Now, here's the thing. Like, you got to ask yourself, this is really, we were talking about cost of admission earlier, but this is her cost of admission.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
But, makes me laugh when you get married or you move in with somebody and then you try to change them. No, hey, you bought this ticket. This is what comes with the ticket.
Yeah.
There's nobody perfect. So you can't marry somebody or move in with them and then be like, hey, so I'm going to change this about you. No.
Right.
You knew this was the deal.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like there's certain things about my wife, about all of our partners, you don't love, but I can't, that's who she is. So I got to there's nobody perfect.
No.
I can't tinker until I find perfection is never going to happen.
Right.
Nope.
If that's the only problem, I think you made out pretty good.
Yeah. They're perfect otherwise?
Yeah.
That sounds pretty perfect,
Yeah.
actually. Like, all you got to do is his dishes, like...
Yeah, listen, Aaron, wash a dish. That's all I'm saying.
Well, it's interesting, like...
I'm kidding. Take it easy.
No, man. I mean, with like Mariah and I, my wife and I, like she does the dishes and like it's great. Like I really appreciate it. But there are some times where she's like, hey, look, if you got one dish, like just don't leave it in the sink. Go ahead and do it. So there are certain things that she asks me that I'm willing to sacrifice. And when I'm willing to sacrifice stuff for her, she's willing to sacrifice stuff for me. And that's what a relationship is. So the question, Aaron, is like, what are you sacrificing for him? And can you go to him and say, hey, look, like for this to really work better, like I really love to sacrifice this for you. Do you mind doing X, Y, and Z for me? And you maybe can get a conversation started there. But yeah, I totally agree. Like if he was always piling up dishes, you can't just expect that he's not going to do that.
No, but you can have a conversation
Yes,
with him. And you
100%.
can tell him how important it is, and not in a way. Here's the thing: we want to avoid three things. We want to avoid blaming and shaming, and I think
And
that's
passive aggressive.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. And instead, we and also like naming, like name calling,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
that can be passive aggressive way, or that can just be aggressive,
Right.
depending on how you handle it. And so I think that's often the problem here is what happens is intellectually we know this isn't on par with what we want, and so but we react emotionally. Can't believe you just gonna leave those dishes in the sink like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, maybe there's a better way. Hey, can I talk to you about this? Look, I know I've got a little bit of OCD and I don't like having dishes in the sink.
Yeah.
Would you, 5 words that always help me. Would you be willing to?
Yeah.
Would you be willing to do the dishes after we're done eating?
Dude, totally.
What's
Yeah.
he going to say? No, I hate you?
That's
Screw
exactly
you?
what Mariah. She only had to ask me like one time or say something like that one time. She was like basically talking about how she felt disrespected if I just left like one dish in the sink, and I was like, oh, I didn't realize I was making you feel disrespected. So that was, but she didn't come to me and be like, really, what the heck's your problem, dude?
Yeah.
Like you're a freaking slob. What is? I mean, like if she would approach me that way, I probably would not
shut
have.
down.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know both Beth and I had dish piling tendencies.
Uh-huh.
And so I told her, I go, hey, here's what we're going to do for a week. Paper plates.
Yeah.
Do you like eating on paper plates? And in plastic forks and everything. So everything we just picked and threw away. She was like, this makes me feel like a child. I'm like, then we got to do better.
Yeah.
Together we got to do better because I'm just as bad.
Yeah.
And if there's a period where like, you're like, we both get in those headspaces where we know that might pile up in the pile up headspace. And she'll say, let's go paper this week.
dude, together we got to do better.
Yeah.
So that's how Erin has to approach this with her partner.
Well, that's maybe
Yeah.
so
I love that.
for what she and I have been trying to do together. It works better if I go, hey, let's do this together.
Yeah, of course.
I'll wash them up, you dry them off, and that way, even if they're my dishes or even if they're her dishes or whatever they are, they're our dishes. We live in the place together.
Yeah.
But there are things about, like I said, there are things about Beth that I just. I'm not going to say any because I know she's going to listen to this, but but I have said to her, I know this is part of who you are.
Yes.
So she was like, that bothers you. I'm like, yeah, but I know this was part of, I knew this about you when we got married. So it's not like I'm going to marry you now change. Like I felt like that was a really unfair thing for me to do. If it bothered me so much, we shouldn't have got married.
And that's the most mature stance, because quite often it's the opposite. Like, we got married, now it's time for you to change into the person that I aspired to marry.
Yeah.
And of course that doesn't work. Now, I think what you're saying here, and I love this, is it is possible to dislike certain aspects of someone and still love the whole person. And I think if we can
Right?
Yeah.
if we can make that distinction, like, I'm going to there's certain things Ryan does I dislike, there's certain things I do that he dislikes.
Yeah.
But
I can't even appreciate those differences between us, man.
I think ultimately that's where you want to get is being able to respect and appreciate those differences. But the first step is tolerating, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to get toward respecting.
Like Californians in general, they're very tolerant. Remember when we first came to California, I'm like, everyone's so nice here the first time we were ever in California.
Yeah.
And we were in Chipotle line, and this lady turned around, she's like, we are not nice, we are tolerant.
I will say that's true. For the last couple months, I've really made my point when I walk my dog or go anywhere, I eye contact and say hello to everybody.
Yeah.
Because everybody's all masked and it's like so hidden now.
Yes.
That for me, more than ever, it's important to show you I'm not afraid of you, dude.
Right.
So hello.
Yeah.
And that's true because some people just look at you like, what the fuck? Like, no, not even a hello back.
Right.
They're not used to the friendly part of it. They're more tolerant. They're not going to tell you to fuck off, but they're not going to say hello either.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Massachusetts in a small little town. In Western Mass, and so we were all friendly.
Yeah.
Like, that was not even an issue for us. But I think like saying hello to people on the street is so fascinating how much people don't expect it. They don't expect any kind of interaction with somebody they don't know.
Yeah, they almost jump.
Yeah, like any
what do you
kind
want?
of, yeah, well, like, what do you need something from me? In New York, I like doing it. One of my favorite games in New York is to be overly friendly to strangers. So I was in an elevator with this dude. It was just me and him. We were in a high rise. And we get in the elevator. And if it's just you and one other person in an elevator, there's certain etiquette rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, if he stands in the back left, I stand in the back right.
Right.
I stood middle, shaded over a little to the left. So I was a little too close. And I had my headphones in, but not on because I wanted to hear him. And as soon as we both get on, he took back left and I took center left a little back. And I just heard him go, what the fuck? So we both hit our buttons and he was like 40 and I was like 21. And I'm sitting there and I'm just pretending to sing my song. And I can just hear him just heavy breathing in the bed, just like, all right. And my floor open.
This is all pre-COVID, by the way.
Pre-COVID. This is all pre-COVID. This is when I was still traveling and actually getting in elevators with people. And the elevators open up and I hear him go, "This is your floor, man." And I go, "I'm on a ride up with you." And he just put his hand over the door and he goes, "The fuck you are. This is your floor." But I like doing that stuff, man. For me,
a friend, Julian, Julian Smith, he likes to make himself uncomfortable, like just to like stretch his comfort zone a bit. And I think that's also one of those keys to satisfaction. Is
I do that too.
Yeah, I think that helps you be comfortable in more scenarios. Anytime he gets on an elevator, he just continues to face the back the entire time, even if it's a full elevator. So everyone's facing the other way, and he just because I mean, you get on that way, everyone just turns around though, right?
I love
and
that.
He just doesn't turn around. And he'll just stand there, floor 11,
definitely
please.
doing that. I like
That's great.
feeling uncomfortable. I like making other people feel uncomfortable, not in a gotcha way. I don't like doing that, but I like the shared experience of I love that feeling. I mean, this is really how I live my life. I enjoy.
If you're not watching us on YouTube, his shirt says, "I like weird shit."
I do. I like it so much.
Yeah.
If you ever start a sentence, "Hey, do you want to see?" I'm like, just stop right there. Yes.
Yeah.
If I've never seen it before, the answer is
I do want to see it. Yeah.
yes, I want to see that. Yes.
Ryan, I'm going to skip Lottie's question. Aaron, I'm going to send you a copy of our first book, Minimalism, Live a Meaningful Life. There's a relationship chapter in there. We talk about the 3 different types of relationships. I won't go into detail right now, but if you like our podcast, you'll like the audiobook version of Minimalism, Live a Meaningful Life. Or if you want the book or the ebook version, we'll send you a copy of those as well. Ryan, what time is it?
It is time for our lightning round where we answer your text messages. You can text your questions and comments to area code 937-202-4654.
Yes, indeed. Those texts, strangely enough, go to both of our phones. We answer as many as we can. But we answer some on the podcast as well. Now, Josh, here's what we try to do during the lightning round. We answer questions with a short, shareable, less than 140 character response.
Okay.
But not really. We just
Just ramble and ramble. Podcast Sean will clean it up and post.
Yeah.
It'll look real good, man.
he finds something beautiful. He puts it in the show notes so people can copy and share our pithy answers on social media. We got a question from Leisha.
How will I know when I've found the one?
Woo. Yeah.
Man.
Here, I'll give you an opinion. In fact, on the Maximal, I'm going to read this excerpt from our forthcoming book about this. It's called The One Lie. Because ultimately, I think the idea of finding the one, like, I get it. There's a lot of romantic comedies that make me feel like my wife is the one.
Right.
Sure.
There are other ones, though.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest.
Well, people who have been married more than once.
Right.
Yeah.
Would tell you that they thought that first one was the one.
Yeah.
And now the second one is the one.
And it's interesting too, because like they actually could have been the one for the 10 years, and then, I mean, shit changes, man. People change. It's like So I think I agree with you. The one is a lie. You have to be open to that person always maybe being the one, but also open to like maybe they won't be the one day. You know, there's nothing wrong with approaching a relationship like that. I feel like.
First, I will say you mentioned romantic comedy, and you give me a McConaughey failure to launch vibe.
Do I?
Yeah. All right.
All right.
But I don't know about the idea of the one.
Yeah.
I can tell you this. When I met my wife, 10 days later, I called my parents. And I never talked about marriage before, and I was like, I'm marrying her. Mm. There was something about her in specific that was just different, made me feel differently than anybody I had ever met. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know about that. And I don't know if it's, God forbid, anything ever happened or we broke up, if I would ever feel that way about somebody else. I have no idea.
Right.
I do know that this woman was different than any other woman I had ever met before. Yeah. And when I met her, I don't know if you know this about me. I was a single dad. I was raising 3 kids.
Right. And they're all grown now.
They're all grown.
Yeah.
I had met a woman early on in my life who had 2 kids. And we had a kid together, when we broke up, I kept all 3 kids. And so when I met Beth, that feeling for the one, oddly enough, I had kind of reserved for my kids. I was like, this is where my heart is going to be from here on out.
We're definitely going to be talking about that because, I think this idea of love is like there are different kinds of love, right?
And I had never felt, when I met her after that first night, I was like, this just must be because I hadn't been close to a grown woman in a long time. This is why because I had just been with 3 kids, and I had in my brain, it's funny, in my brain, people had always tried to set me up. I'm like, hey, I'm not going out. I'm at a 7 as far as 7 to 10 happy. I know what it's like. One of these breakups brings you down to a 0.
Yeah.
I'm not willing to go to 0 with these 3 kids. So 7 is cool. I'm happy. I'm raising these kids. They bring me so much joy. There's a part of my life I'm just going to neglect for a while. And I was okay with that because I wasn't really willing to risk going back down to that fucking bottom with the 3 kids. It was just crushing doing it before.
Yeah.
But meeting her right away was like, oh, this is a different person.
Yeah.
So like,
I agree with you. I think Ryan and I both felt that about our wives as well. So, but what I'm saying with respect to the one, in fact, Dan Savage has this great line. He says, "There is no one, so find your 7.9 that rounds up to one."
Yeah.
Right. And because you even talked about how like there are certain things, or when we go talk about Aaron's question, the dishes. Well, he's not the one. He's the 9.7 though that you can round up, or the 0.97 you can round up to a one, and. I think, unfortunately, looking for the one sets a really bad expectation because it presupposes there's going to be the perfect relationship, and I think when we're seeking that, we're just setting ourselves up for tumbling down a hill of discontent.
I think romantic comedies Hollywood does a complete disservice to actual relationships. Because you see these two people and you're like, oh, I should feel like that. And this relationship, it's not that one that I saw on TV. I'm still waiting for that feeling. And guess what? That feeling doesn't happen. Like that. Here's the bottom line. I'll tell you this right now. I love my wife. I don't love her enough to stand out in the rain and kiss her with my jeans on. That's, you know what I mean? Like that is a romantic comedy thing. You're not going to find anybody I like willing enough to stand out in wet jeans. You know, wet jeans is the worst feeling ever. Dude. You know what I mean? So it's just so I love you, but not wet jeans.
Yeah,
love
not
you,
wet jeans love you. Oh my God.
Yeah.
You know what's funny about those movies is that the movie is the story leading up to that kiss, which is really the beginning of their relationship. Yeah. It's leading up to them finally getting together. You don't see the movie about after they get together and have kids and have all the other shit that happens in life.
Yeah, exactly.
I totally agree, man. It's a bit of a disservice because that feeling, you might be able to capture that kissing someone in the rain feeling, but that's not going to last forever. That's a pleasure that is ephemeral, and it's okay to feel that pleasure, but to expect to feel that pleasure 100% of the time up until the day you die, like that's
what it is, right? Is that it's not that pleasure you might not get it for a second, but to expect your relationship day in and day out to be this fairy tale, and not to. I think people pull the plug on relationships, marriages especially, too quickly now. Yeah, as soon as there's one lull. Yeah. They think, well, that's the fucking end of the relationship.
Right.
That's it. But you're going to have lulls. Yeah. You just got to ride them out together. Yeah. Like, we've been together since 2001. There have been a lot of ebbs.
Yeah.
Right.
But you just have to go, this is an ebb.
I think you got to make sure you're still compatible, though. Our friend, Dr. Christopher Ryan, he talks about the 3 things that are necessary in a relationship. So instead of looking for the one, I'd probably look for these 3 things. First off is chemistry. And I think that's what you're talking about. When you met your wife first day, of course there's chemistry, right? Yeah. We often mistake lust for love. But I think there's chemistry in other relationships as well, non-sexual relationships. Like Ryan and I have a particular chemistry. We even use those terms, right, when we're talking. So any relationship has chemistry. Any relationship has love, any good relationship at least. And any relationship has compatibility. Those 3 things are required. I think the problem quite often is that we get into a relationship because 1 or maybe even 2 of those are working, right? Yeah. And it's just the chemistry. It's there. We're all over each other all day. It's great. And yeah, of course I love her. I have this deep affection for this person, right? But then you realize like, oh no, we're not compatible, and there could be a thousand reasons why you're not compatible. Like if your wife is like, no, I hate kids, I never want to see a kid in my life, you'd be like, well, that's kind of a problem for us, right?
You see those 3 people?
She's like, can you just put a blanket on them?
Yeah. Right. Have a packing party with them.
Just tell me what time they go to sleep. I'll be over after that.
Right. And so I think we have to realize that like quite often we're not compatible. Now there are other things that happen as well. When we get into toxic relationships, then of course you want to abandon that as soon as you can. If someone is behaving in a toxic way, whether it's verbal abuse or God forbid violence or something, let go of that, because that rage stems from a deep sort of insecurity or immaturity, as do any of our sort of anger issues. I think they often stem from this place of insecurity. Yeah. I think ultimately though, Alicia, you want to realize that you are complete in an empty room, right? And so whoever you bring into your life, they're going to enhance or augment or amplify your experience of life. They're not going to complete you. They're not the one that completes you. You're already complete.
Yeah, I totally agree. So we've had time to prepare for this answer. So we've got some pithy stuff ready. Mine is love from another is not a substitute for self-love. And I think people, they often tell themselves, if I find the one, then my life is going to be complete. And it's really what I'm saying. It's the same thing as Josh, is you have to be really comfortable with yourself, and then you can bring someone in to like amplify your life. But love from someone else is not going to it's not going to be a substitute for that love that you need to have for yourself, or that acceptance that you need to have for yourself. Even though it seems like a really easy fix, like, oh man, I got a bad life, I really don't like who I am, I need to find someone who loves me, that'll make me feel good. Sometimes it actually makes you feel worse, because then you got someone who loves you and who's treating you well, but you still don't feel like you deserve that love, so then that comes out in other ways.
Josh, have you ever felt like you've gotten into a relationship or known anyone who's gotten into a relationship who didn't really much like themselves, and they thought that it was going to fix them in a way?
Oh yeah, one of my, so it's okay. There's somebody who's very close to me. I'm not gonna.
You don't have to say any
we
names.
won't go with names,
Yeah.
but
Let's say it's Tim.
A friend,
yeah.
of a friend of a friend.
It's heartbreaking for me, because she is incredibly unhappy with who she is and has turned to alcohol and dudes to try to fill that hole.
Yeah.
And is willing to do things that she doesn't like, and is willing to be a person that she doesn't want to be in order to keep somebody's love. And it's heartbreaking for me to watch, because the thing that really makes you beat your head against a wall, which is like, how come that person doesn't see? And it doesn't matter how many times you say it to them. I wish you saw what we see when you look at yourself in the mirror.
Yeah.
But she doesn't. She has zero self-worth. She has zero feelings that she's lovable or that she's worth love. And so she's constantly chasing it from people. And because of that, never finds it.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, she's always feeling empty.
Yeah.
You can't fill a hole with a cup in it.
Yeah.
Or a cup with a hole in it.
Yeah.
I like the other way.
Fill a hole with a cup in it.
That's great.
Yeah.
But I too, I battle a little bit with depression. And I can feel it coming. And even though I'm cognizant of it and I know when I'm in it, I'm always looking for other things, and so when I'm depressed, I smoke more weed or whatever it is to fill. So the reason I see it so much in her, and it's so heartbreaking, I feel it for like maybe a week it's dark. Those are dark, deep places. When I talk to her, she's like, this is where I am all the time.
Damn.
All the time.
Yeah.
And so it's really heartbreaking to know that she feels stuck, and there's nothing that I feel like that anybody from the outside can really do until she gets tired of feeling that way. I don't know if she can be, your instinct is to rescue or to go help. And so it's a really tough situation for me and Beth, because we're both super close to her and feel super helpless, but just watch from the outside as that drain just gets circled all the time,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, is there any?
I mean, I think when you're in a place like that, like you have to stop bringing in external things to try and fill that hole. So how do you get her to that point?
Yeah.
Like someone is not going to get help until they want help. And the help that I would recommend for someone like that is you got to surround yourself with like an awesome community. So whether that's like a racquetball club or church, whatever it is, like find a community a supportive community that you can get behind. And go talk to a professional, man. Like I got an awesome therapist, and I'm telling you, having a good therapist is like one of the best tools that you can have in life.
She lies to her therapist.
Woo. Yeah, so she's got to be honest first.
She lies to her therapist.
She lies to herself.
Yeah.
The only therapist that stuck, I finally found out stuck because the therapist wasn't challenging her.
Oh. Yeah.
So she was lying to the therapist and and I would talk to the therapist and be like, what's the deal? And she'd say, well, this is what she's saying. And I was like, this is not the truth.
Yeah.
And you're letting her get away with that. So there's no honesty in the safest place possible.
Yeah.
There's no honesty. It's been really tough to watch. because you're constantly you think somebody else's love is going to make you whole. And it just, but because that person who's chasing that love always finds unhealthy love.
Yeah.
Because she's willing to be treated in whatever manner that person wants to treat her, as long as he stays.
There's a temporary thing that she's obviously getting from the alcohol and from the men, and that's just it. It's temporary. That's why she just continues to go after it. But it makes me think. I had a family relative who they were addicted to heroin. Had a few family relatives addicted to heroin, and this parent of this family member brought me in, and they're like, "Dude, he's off the rails. Like, we just tell him something to help him." And I'm looking at him, and he's just like, "Hey, what's up, hey, what's up?" And I'm like, "There's nothing to do here. Like, this kid does not want help. Like, there's nothing for me to say to this person. Like, they don't want help. I could give them the best Tony Robbins speech that they've ever heard right now, like the most motivational speech that this person has ever heard. But I can see that they don't want the help. So no matter how much help you give someone, if they don't want it, like, they're never going to fix themselves. She's got to start being honest with herself. But until she wants to change, like, what are you going to do? You can't force someone to be honest with themselves.
You can't drag him or her kicking and screaming to success, right? Like, I'm going to make you successful. I'm going to make you whatever. It goes back to the whole thing. You can't change the people around you. You can't actually change someone unless they're trying to change. Yeah. I don't think people actually hate change, though. They hate being changed. We all like good changes, right? Like if all of a sudden you look in your banking account and there was an extra $100,000 in there, I love this kind of change. Like,
is there something you want to tell me?
Yeah.
You're the 100th guest. What?
Or you get a pair of pants out and there's like a pocket full of change in there. You're like, I love this change.
Well, I mean, it's heartbreaking to watch someone you love not. You want to shake change into them, but you can't. I've had addicts in my family, and like, it's heartbreaking to watch, but you do realize, like, there's nothing I can do to change. This goes back to that question for the woman washing the dishes. There's nothing I can do to change you. Zero things that I'm going to say is going to change who you are.
Yeah, it might change my behavior temporarily.
Yeah.
I'm going to feel a resentment because of it, though. And the resentment's obviously never good for the relationship.
All right, before we get into our listener tips and added value segment today, it looks like we have a bunch more surprise questions this week.
Yes, indeed, including why is Josh Wolf moving to Nashville? Where are the minimalists considering moving? What should I do when my values and my partner's values simply don't align? How do you check in on an introvert during hard times without overwhelming that person? How do I find a middle ground with a partner who is hard to deal with? Plus a million more questions for Josh Wolf and the Minimalists. And if you want to hear all that, check out our Maximal episodes on the Minimalist Private Podcast. It's a completely separate podcast, our private podcast is, and it's the most honest way for the Minimalists to earn any income because we don't believe in advertisements. By the way, if you're not subscribed to our private podcast, you're literally missing 2/3 of our show. So try it out for 3 or 4 weeks. We think you'll get immense value from it. It's worth way more than the $2 that we charge you.
It's worth at least $250.
$250 a day. No, I mean, actually, it's like what, 25 cents a day or something like that. It's relatively inexpensive, but what you get for it is these really deep conversations where we let our hair down. We're able to talk about some things. In fact, with Josh Wolf, there's quite a few things that I know for a fact we wouldn't talk about on public because I know he wouldn't be comfortable talking about some of these things in public. So if you want to check out all that, it's our private podcast. Head on over to theminimalists.com/support to subscribe and get your personal link so that our private podcast plays in your favorite podcast app. Ryan, what else you got for us this week?
Here are some voicemail comments and tips from our listeners. Check them out.
Hi, this is Anson Fellerup calling from Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm a designer and frequently help clients navigate through the process of creating an intentional home. And in this process, I avoid trends at all costs. If we really look at what trendy design is, we see that it's designed to encourage consumerism. Companies are motivated to make products that will eventually go out of style. So I direct clients to architectural and design history to inform the style of the home. Quality is just as important in function as it is in design.
Hi, this is Tracy from Madison, Wisconsin, and I wanted to share that over the last
maybe 6 weeks to 2 months, my relationship with social media has drastically changed because my intention with it has really changed. Mainly, I'm a kidney donor, and I started really speaking up about it and trying to educate people and becoming a resource for people who were curious about it, because there's so few out there, because this happens, but almost nobody talks about it. And it's been so rewarding in that every week a new person or even more than one person will contact me about donation. And it is the most rewarding way I have used social media. I also talk about finances, which was actually spurred from the budget podcast by the Minimalists. And I have gone like hell-bent on paying off debt, not using credit cards, and I now have this ripple effect in my social network of other people that are doing the same thing. So it feels good to be intentionally spreading the good and sharing the things most people don't talk about and seeing really positive results and even richer and more positive connections coming back from that.
All right, y'all. Thanks again to Josh Wolf for joining us today.
Yeah.
2 places to send you. He's hilarious. I think his YouTube channel is a great gateway into his comedy, short clips. He has so many, especially if you have kids, but even if you don't have kids, it's hilarious. It's a bond. There's bonding within his humor in a way that I don't experience with a whole lot of comedians. Yeah. And he has some great specials. What's the one that you watched recently?
Father of the Year.
Yeah, Father of the Year.
So good.
So you can check that out. But also his YouTube channel, just these short 3, 5, 10-minute clips of him on stage. But also, we'll put a link to that in the show notes. Let's put a link to his Facebook fan page as well, because twice a week he does 2 live shows on Facebook. Hundreds of thousands of people watch these things. One is called Controlled Chaos. The other is called A High Live. We'll talk to him about both of those on the Maximal episode. But check those out. His Facebook fan page. It's really the place where he's able to get personal and be himself unencumbered. We'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. For our added value this week, Ryan, I don't know if you've heard it yet. Sufjan Stevens' new album just came out. It's called The Ascension.
No.
You know Sufjan Stevens.
Yeah. I like Sufjan.
I like some of his albums. He's so experimental sometimes. Like, he made a classical album a few years ago. Remember there was a time where he was experimenting. He was going to do a album titled after every state. So he put out an album called Michigan, one called Illinois. I think Illinois might have been like his sort of breakthrough independent album. Yeah. But his album that came out last decade, I think it was, what year was that? 2011, 2014, 2013. It's called Carrie and Lowell. It's one of my favorite albums of the decade.
I don't think I've listened to that one.
It's super singer-songwritery, but this new album, it's called Ascension, and it's kind of ethereal. I don't even know how to describe it. It's ethereal. It's like if singer-songwriter met Sigur Rós.
I was just thinking, like, when I think ethereal, Sigur Rós is the first person that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Or first band that comes to mind.
Well, the title of it's Ascension, and it feels like I'm ascending into something when I'm listening to it. And so I would definitely recommend it. I'm really getting value from it. My favorite song from there is called Video Game. And so I would encourage you to check it out, but the whole album is out there now. It's called Ascension, and it's definitely worth a listen. All right, real quick for right here, right now, here's one thing that's going on in the life of the minimalist. Well, I think it's your life too, because a new month is right around the corner in just a couple days. We're going to have a brand new month, and that means it's time for a new 30-day minimalism game. theminimalists.com/game to figure out what the heck is the minimalism game. Real quick, basically you partner up with someone, a friend, family member, coworker. Beginning of the month, you each get rid of 1 item on the first day, 2 items on the second day, 3 items on the third day. Whoever goes the longest wins. If you both make it at the end of the month, you've both won, because it's about 500 items, which is a really good start when you're decluttering. The reason you want to head on over to theminimalists.com/game, though, there's a free calendar you can download. Also instructions for the game as well. The game is completely free to play. The calendar is free to download, and it tracks how many items you're getting rid of each day. I would encourage you to find a friend or family member and let go together. It makes decluttering a little bit more fun. The 30-day minimalism game. You can follow The Minimalists on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The Minimalists. Come to one of our live podcast shows. Visit theminimalists.com/tour to find a city near you. If you have a question, comment, or minimalism tip for our podcast, email a voice memo to podcast@theminimalists.com. You can comment on this episode at youtube.com/theminimalists. And if you want our show notes in your inbox, sign up for our email list over at theminimalists.com. You'll also receive our simple Sunday emails whenever we send those. And if you leave here today with just one message, we hope it's this: love people and use things, because the opposite never works. Thanks for listening, y'all.
We'll see you next time.
Every little thing you think that you need, Every little thing you think that you need, every little thing that's just feeding your greed. Oh, I bet that you'd be fine without it.